Well, my name's Jeremy. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. I found some victory in self-worth, and I'm currently battling fear. How's it going, guys? Hey. I'm really, really grateful to be here. I feel like every time I get an opportunity to talk here, it's always like, okay, let's try and put down the pastory, Jeremy, the singer guy, persona, and let you guys get to know me, the real me, a little bit more, because I think it's fun just to connect with folks. And turns out we're all weird in the same ways. It's kind of cool. So my name's Jeremy. My wife is here too. Her name's Erin. Wave, Erin. Erin is pretty shy, but she is a firecracker. Trust me, she's wonderful. Well, welcome, guys. We're on step 12 today, which is the power of service. I did a process group this year, and it was life-changing and wonderful. And so it's so cool to celebrate a graduation like we're doing on Friday, because every single one of those people have just been through a gambit of nonsense, and right? If you guys have been through a process group, you know, it's tough. Like, you're coming out with some battle wounds. And I went through one this year, and it was a joy. And I remember step 12 was kind of by the time we got to step 12, it was like, we're like 6 months in and we're exhausted. And we're just like, okay, let's just get this one over with so that we can be done. Right? I think there is a bit of that. It's kind of like the end of a school year when you're in high school, right? Like, okay, let me just get through this week. I just want to go. I played hooky my last day of high school because I was just over it, you know? And so there's that temptation of like, okay, like, can we just, and I think that we have that temptation with step 12. I did all the inventory, I did the release, I did this, can we just be done? And I think that we need to flip that script. And I think it's so great that we are talking about step 12 this month at Recovery, because there is so much work to do. I really, really believe in that simple phrase, you can't keep it unless you give it away. All the work that we do, it's like we've been running a race, and then as soon as we see the finish line, we're like, close enough. I'm good, I'm going home. Right? It's like, it's there. That's step 12. And you know, what's funny is that finish line, you know what it really is? It's the beginning of life after the process group. We're gonna be in 1 Corinthians 12 today. We're gonna look at gifts of the Spirit. We're gonna look at calling. Look at like, okay, I get all the Jesus stuff. He did all these things for me. Now I'm here, I'm in the chair, I'm in church, what do I do? Because we often talk about like, you should serve, you should get involved, let's not sit still. But what do we actually, what do each individual, how do we figure out where to serve? How do we figure out what to do? You know, we did this volunteer fair a few weeks ago, which was chaotic and wonderful and typical RA, I loved it. And it was overwhelming, right? To have what do we do? And so what we're gonna do today is we're gonna look at scripture to see how does the Bible talk about serving and volunteering in church? Because the Bible talks about it a whole bunch, you know? Like, yes, the Bible is about God and his work, and it's the finished work about the disciples and all these amazing miracles that happened back then. But it also speaks a lot about what do we do now? How do we live in community? How do we love each other? How do we find our purpose and our calling? Ooh, calling. And that's the word I want to fixate on today, because that is a word that I kind of hate sometimes. During my process group, I really struggled with the idea of calling. I feel like I'm doing the ministry thing, and like I feel like I'm called to it. And calling is a joy. It means I get to do this. I love my job. I have this awesome opportunity to be a part of a team, to be a part of a church that I love, but also there is that feeling of, I am trapped into this. There's that feeling of, okay, this is my life now. There's the feeling of like, I have to do this. I have to do this. I think that's what a calling is. And there is a joy in that. But there is also a fear in that. And fear is what I'm working on right now. I talked with Erin a lot about this, about how a calling is a wonderful thing when we accept it, but it is real painful when you try to fight it. And I think a calling is different than I like something. It's different even than I think than I'm good at something. Like I really like reality TV. Anyone guys like reality TV? I love reality TV. I like the dating shows. I like watching just 6 blonde girls yelling and crying at each other. So fun. I like the competition shows like Survivor. I love Survivor. The first reality show that really got me into it was Project Runway. Anyone seen Project Runway? It's a fashion reality I love it. And it's interesting. I watched Project Runway because my wife, who's an author, who's very talented, was also she's a seamstress. She designs clothing. We worked in theater, and so she was a costumer. She's very good at sewing. And it's like, well, I'm not interested in fashion. Clearly. I wear the same thing every day. Thank you. I thought it was appropriate this week, because, but I wanted to connect with my wife. If your spouse loves something, you gotta learn to love it. You gotta learn to connect with them on their level. I'm a firm believer in that. So we found this show, Project Runway. And it's a reality show where fashion designers compete for a prize. It's very stressful for them, it's very exciting. And I like Project Runway now, I love it. I feel like now I appreciate fashion. I like it. I like to see the fashion show, see how they make it. It's cool, it's fun. Doesn't mean I am called to fashion. I just like it. I just think it's awesome. If Jeremy designed clothes, it would not be Project Runway, it would be Project Runaway, because you would run away. It's an OGPG joke. My wife is gifted. She's very skilled at sewing. She's very skilled at that. She's very good at that. But it's also not a calling. Erin is not called to fashion, just because she could probably keep up with those people on that show, because she's very talented. It's different than a calling. A calling is not, I can do something. A calling is, I must do this. The calling is, I can't get away. The calling is Jonah, right? It's God saying, you gotta do this, and Jonah's like, it doesn't matter how far away you run, God's like, nope, here's a fish. Nope, you're gonna go. That's what calling is. And sometimes calling is, it really is like the Jonah thing, where God just speaks. He's like, Amber, you must go. Sometimes it is, and that's awesome. God has that within his power to do, but oftentimes God, just like in recovery, we can have the radical transformation road to Damascus, but oftentimes it is the slow, daily discipline where God speaks. If we are faithful in our everyday, God opens our eyes to the extraordinary. Your calling is an extraordinary thing. The calling that you have on your life is a miraculous thing. God made you. We see in Psalm 139, God says, I knit you together in your mother's womb, strand by strand, piece by piece, just like a seamstress carefully creating every component so it all fits perfectly. He made you perfectly. And within you is a calling, a purpose. And it might not be exactly what you expect. And sometimes discovering that is a radical moment. Oftentimes it's by going out and doing that you will discover your calling. I'm a worship leader, right? I never wanted to be a worship leader. My mom's a worship leader. So every teenager ever, I don't want to be like them. I want to be different. I want to forge my own, right? So my teenage rebellion was to say, I don't want to be a worship leader. I liked music. I enjoyed it. I was good at it, but I didn't think it was my calling because my mom did it. That's the logic of a 15-year-old, right? And it wasn't until, but slowly over time, by her dragging me to church. Okay, Jeremy, we need a drummer. Okay, you got to do it. The leads. Okay, Jeremy, you got to stop playing drums, start singing. It's time. There's a need. I want you to do it. And even though I was resistant, and even though I fought against it, and even though my first chance I got after I left high school was to never do it again, and I walked away from church entirely. But it's in the slow obedience, the slow revelation of daily life that God opened my eyes to see. It's not just you like music. He says, I have a purpose for you. And so me, the shy, nerdy, introverted one, like I would rather be home watching Project Runway sometimes. But I get on this stage and I make a fool out of myself 8 sessions a week, because we do 8 worship events a week at Temple. And the reason I do it is because there is a purpose behind my calling. Even though it's the thing that I being on stage scares me a lot. But on the other side of that fear is where I found my calling. You know? So let's get into 1 Corinthians 12. 1 Corinthians 12, famous passage of scripture. The end of this chapter deals with the whole love is patient, love is kind, love is blah, 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 that we read at every wedding, right? But there's so much good stuff in 1 Corinthians. We don't have to just quote that one passage. There's so many wonderful things. 1 Corinthians 12, Paul talks a great deal about what it is to serve in church. It's very practical. It's strikingly practical. And he compares the church to a body, to the human body. You guys have probably heard the expression, we are the body of Christ. Yeah? It's a phrase we throw around a lot. Christ is the head of the church. Jesus, the rest of us, right? It's a metaphor that I find to be supremely helpful. The idea of everything has a purpose. Everything has a function. And so that's what 1 Corinthians 12 is. So to talk about 1 Corinthians 12, well, I thought it'd be fun, since I'm always weird and I want to tell a weird story, is how we take ourselves, our bodies, for granted. And how sometimes even the smallest part could have the biggest impact on the body overall, right? Like, for example, when my wife was like a little kid, like real small, like she's probably like 7, but in my mind she's like 3. Just like, hi, you know, Erin. She and her brother were chopping firewood. You know, got a little log. Erin would, you know, she's like this, and she'd pick it up, put it on the thing, ready. And then her older brother take an axe, chop it. Don't get ahead of me. I bet you can see where this is going. So, Aaron picks it up, and he, over and over and over. And then we got to one log that's a little thicker, and so she picks it up, she puts it down, and he chops it. And it doesn't quite make it all the way through. And so Aaron, being 3, says, oh, hold on, let me just adjust this for you. Let me just get it just right. And then Aaron's brother, who wasn't watching, goes, hi, and chops her finger off. Aaron's like, yeah. Yes, little tiny 3-year-old or whatever old Aaron loses her index finger to an axe and just starts, right? Like a child would do. Heartbreaking. There's a bunch of surgeries to get it back. Now she has her finger. Wave. Yeah, it's good. Her finger's okay. But it's a very small part of your body. But losing it, end of the world. Oh, it's devastating, right? Even though when I think of, like, when I look at you, I might not notice your fingers. I'm like, okay, do they have all 5? I'm not like paying attention to that. We might not realize how big of a deal one finger is, but it is so, so important. And losing it helps you realize how important it truly is. That's why Paul uses the body as a metaphor for the church. 1 Corinthians 12, starting in verse 12, just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one, so it is with Christ. For in one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and all were made to drink of one Spirit. The body does not consist of one, but of many. So, just like a human body, just like your body, in church, everyone has a role to play. Everyone's got a function. Everyone has a purpose. And that isn't like a hypothetical. This isn't like one of those like, everyone, but there are exceptions. Everyone does not mean everyone else. It means everyone. You have a purpose. Just like in a human body, you've got a purpose. And that purpose can be discovered by serving. be discovered by finding it through serving. Another crazy story, this one's for it happened to me. So my wife and I were theater nerds. We like musicals. We like big musicals. So one year while we were dating, my parents bought us tickets to see Mary Poppins on Broadway in New York. It's a famous, epic musical, right? So I'm excited, I'm pumped. At this point, I'm living in Virginia, so I'm packing up my stuff the day of because I'm a dude. So I packed like an hour before my flight leaves. I'm like, you know how it is. When Mary and I go on vacation, she packs like a week in advance. She's like, I'm like, whatever. And I just grab the first 4 shirts, yank them down, put them in the suitcase. And I run over and I grab socks, just put them in the suitcase. Then I run over to the bathroom. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna use this and then pack it. So I put on deodorant, and then I pack it. And I grab my contacts, and I poke myself in the eye, and then I put it away, and then I pack it. And then I brush my teeth. I squirt this giant glob of toothpaste onto my toothbrush, and I go to pack it. But in my rush, in my hurry, I swallowed the toothpaste. You ever swallowed a chunk of toothpaste? Like, wah! It's a really gross thing. Toothpaste, highly acidic. It is eroding things on your teeth. But unfortunately for me, the toothpaste, it went down the wrong pipe. You know that feeling where you have like swallowing and you have breathing, right? And if those things get messed up, bad things happen. On a normal day, and I got a huge chunk of toothpaste lodged in my throat, and it just started, I could feel it sizzling. And I just go, and I start frantically, like I was already stressed, grabbing cups of water, and I'm chugging it, and it like hurts, and I can't. And it was several minutes of some of the most excruciating pain I have ever felt, trying to get this toothpaste out of my throat. Terrible feeling. But I finished, packed my suitcase, I fly to New York that day. We get there, I think I'm okay. The next morning I wake up, and I can't swallow. Ooh. Everyone just go, swallow real fast. Something we take for granted a whole lot, but losing that ability, can you imagine? If you've never experienced that, like, what do? I can't eat, I can't take a pill, I can't really even drink anything. Every time I swallowed, it felt like a knife, just awful. And so for a whole week of vacation, I was struggling. And then we get to the day of, Broadway tickets, they're expensive, they're real pricey. I was determined to go. So my wife and I, well, at that time, my girlfriend, Erin, we take a train up to New York. We're walking, we spend the whole day in Manhattan doing touristy stuff. You know, we went to my favorite restaurant, Chipotle, which is my favorite restaurant. And I watched her eat a burrito. And she's like, it's really good. I'm like, I know it is. I couldn't swallow. Couldn't eat anything, couldn't drink anything. We get to the show, and I'm like, I gotta sit still for 3 hours. And I'm excited, but I'm starving, and I'm thirsty, so I start salivating. Oh no, but I can't swallow. So what I do, because I have to sit still for 3 hours, is I buy a souvenir cup from the concession stand. I go back to my seat, and every 60 seconds, watching the show, it spit into this cup. And I filled it up. So gross, right? We don't think about how much swallowing matters until you can't. What I've learned is that we constantly want to try and minimize certain things in church as less important and certain things as more important. People romanticize, like for example, worship ministry. People will romanticize it. Oh, it's such a big deal. And they'll minimize kitchen ministry. That is not true. That is not true. Every role in church is vital. Every role in church is vital. Because I'm on stage and Victor's in the booth does not mean that what I do matters more than what he does. If just because John's on stage preaching and someone else is out parking cars does not mean that one is more important than the other. You might not look at someone and think, oh, I can tell that they can swallow. They're fine. You might not be able to tell, but look on the outside like, well, can they sing? But there are so many more important things than just what we see on the outside. Let's look at the word. The body does not consist of one member, but of many. If the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part. If the whole body were an eye, where would be the sense of hearing? If the whole body were an ear, weird imagery, by the way. If the whole body were an ear, where would be the sense of smell? But as it is, God arranged the members of the body, each one of them as he chose. If all were a single member, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, yet one body. You don't want someone else's calling. You don't want to be an ear if you're an eye. You don't want to be a hand if you're a foot. You don't want that. When I was, I struggle a lot with insecurity. I remember there's a worship leader I really look up to, and I was looking at interviews of his, and I saw one where he talked about insecurity. And this is one of the most famous, hugest worship leaders in the world. And I'm like, and so many churches are just like, if we had that stage, if we had that talent, if we had that light. And when this interview, he says, I wake up every day, I think, if only I had this, if only I had that, then imagine what we could do. He's like, if I could sing like this person, if I could only sing like this person, then imagine what I could do. And he says, what I've learned is that each of us have exactly what God intended to give us. And even if we had someone else's gift, we wouldn't be able to use it right. It would not benefit us, and it would not benefit the church. You don't need to have my gift, and I don't need to have yours. Because the church needs both of us equally. The church needs each of us individually. And if my eyes close because they'd rather be ears, then I'm blind. If my feet say, well, because I'm not a hand, then I'm useless. If my feet were hands, I couldn't walk. Walking is important. And so I think that reframing our thinking not around what do all these people have that I wish I had, we need to reframe our thinking around what do I have that God gave me? What do I have? What do you have? What do you have that makes you unique, that makes you special? And if you don't know what it is, that doesn't mean it isn't there. Maybe you just haven't discovered it yet. And you're not going to discover it by sitting in a chair and watching other people use their gifts. You got to get up and do something. I didn't wake up one day and was like, I'm going to be a worship songwriter. And I didn't just look at other songwriters and be like, I'm just going to do exactly what they're doing. No, I tried a bunch of stuff. And when I found something that clicked of like, okay, this is something that I can do. This is something that God has given me. I wasn't going to be like, but I wish I could be this. I wish I could be that. I look oftentimes in envy at people who can do small talk. Oh, that's amazing. People who can make friends. I'm not good at that. That's okay. Imagine like being able to walk in a room and feel confident. Imagine being able to walk in a room and be like, yeah, I'm totally fine with the fact that there are 100 strangers here. That's not terrifying at all. I cannot imagine that. I don't have that gifting. That's okay. Rather than me constantly being like, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? I remember when I talked to this with my sponsor, he said, Jeremy, what is right about you? What is right about you? I shared about this on stage a while ago. Last year, my dad got really sick. He got really sick. My family was on vacation. They were going to Disney World. I had just started at Temple City. And I said, sorry guys, you know what? I really can't go. I got to stay here. I'm just at this new church. It's a lot. It's overwhelming. I don't think I can take a week off. And so they said, fine. They went without me. And then the day before they left, my dad got sick. Had a cold. And he's like, I'm not going to go. I don't feel good. So my family left. 3 days later, my mom called me. She said, Jer, you need to go to my house. You need to pick up your father and take him to the hospital or he's going to die. So I left work. I drove over there. And I found my dad. He had never been to a doctor. My dad's super healthy. He's a golfer. In his retirement, he's golfing every day. He does how many holes are there? Like 18? However many there are. He does all of them. He walks, doesn't use a caddy, doesn't use a golf cart. That's his thing. Carries his clubs and walks. So he's super healthy. He's really in shape from that. Never been to a doctor, never been sick. And my dad was refusing to go to the hospital. And he was telling my mom, I don't need it. I don't need it. I don't need it. I just need to, I'll be fine. I don't need it. I don't need it. I'll be fine. It's not that bad. And so she calls me and she says, go there, get your father, put him in the car, take him to the ER or he's going to die. I get there, and my dad's walking around, cleaning, getting ready. And I could tell that he can't breathe. His lungs aren't working. He's huffing. He's talking really quietly. I've never seen him like that. I put him in the car. I said, Dad, we're going. I get in the car. Aaron's in the back seat. And I start driving. I said, Dad, we're just going to go. I said, I know that you're putting on a brave face. A few minutes of silence go by, and my dad says, I think I'm going to die in that hospital. And he said, I was telling myself that my lungs were fine and they were working properly because I was afraid of dying in a hospital. I wanted to die at home. And I said, Dad, the only hope you have is at that hospital. We took him. You guys ever been to, if you've ever been in a serious situation in the ER, you know, there's like a waiting and it's a waiting room and everyone's kind of relaxed and you get to the exam. And when a nurse realizes that this is truly an emergency, they flip, a switch flips from like, okay, well, we're gonna get your thing, we're gonna do a little vitals to, oh. And she said, oh, I'll be right back. And 30 seconds later, 6 doctors come in and they rush him out to a room to get on fluids. She said, my dad had maybe an hour left to live. And he was gonna die alone because he refused to acknowledge that something was wrong. That the infection in his lungs didn't matter. They got him treated. The doctor came in, I remember, and he said, man, I did a CAT scan, like a scan of your lungs. They look like trash. I was like, wow. Here's what happened. My dad had pneumonia, and he was dying. His lungs he wasn't getting any oxygen to his heart. As a result of that, not only was it hard for him to breathe, but his heart was dying. The infection was in his lungs. Because he didn't deal with the lung issue, his heart was being damaged and damaged and damaged. And now, my dad's on a transplant list for a new heart. But he's still here. I still have him, and I'm very thankful that I have him. See, when we try to minimize one part of our body that is struggling, the whole thing suffers. If you lose just one finger, the pain is everywhere. Just not being able to just have one function not work, and everything suffers. And I saw that so clearly with my father, where he was choosing to ignore one symptom that he thought he could handle, but the entire system was breaking. 1 Corinthians 12. The eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor the head to the feet, I have no need of you. The parts of the body that seem weaker are indispensable. And on those parts of the body we think less honorable, we bestow the greater honor. And on the unpresentable parts are treated with the greater modesty, which our presentable parts do not require. God has so composed the body, giving great honor to the part that it lacked. There may be no division in the body, but the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honored, all rejoice together. I think this is where I want to park it. I know we're out of time, but I think this is so important. You cannot come to recovery alive and ignore step 12. 1 through 11 is not enough. You cannot come, sit, watch me make a fool of myself on stage, and then go home. Because for a long time, it'll feel fine. It'll feel like you're getting something out of it. But the reality is, if we are not giving our part, the system doesn't work. I have heard several times that there are people right now hoping desperately to be in a process group who have been put on a waiting list because no one wants to lead them. Think about, if you've done a process group, think about the power of that it's had in your life. Mine changed my life. It is not right. It is not right that we are making people wait while we sit and we watch. And maybe you think, well, because I don't have John's speaking ability, then I'm no good to anyone. Every part of our church has a role. And I'm gonna tell you this because I love you. You are missing out if you are not serving. You are missing out. You know who got the front row seat to the miracle? The disciples who were carrying it out. You know who saw the bread and fish get multiplied? The guy holding the basket. If you want miracles in your life, if you want to experience that, then don't just sit and wait for it to happen when God is saying, go get it. Go do it. Go be the church. He says, be the hands and feet. And we just want to sit and we say, I don't need my hands. I don't need my feet. I don't need to swallow. I don't need to breathe. That's not how it's supposed to be. So I want to challenge you with this. If you know what you should be doing and you are not currently doing it, let's end that now. Regardless of how scary it is, don't let fear dictate what you do for God. Let's not let fear be the boss. Because I bet on the other side of your fear is your calling. Let's not do that. If you don't know what your calling is yet, it's okay. I guarantee you, sitting and just waiting around is not gonna get you any closer to it. Just get up and do something. That's what step 12 is. Let's give back. Serving at RA, great. How about this? Serve on the media team. Instead of sitting in that seat, sit in one of those seats back there. Simple. I'll teach you. Victor can teach you. I can teach you in an hour to run slides. But when we consider the fact that I bet almost everyone in this room can attest to this, pretty much if you come to Recovery Live, before you come, you watch online. If you want to visit a church, before you go to the church, you're gonna probably watch online. And if we don't have people to run our cameras, to run slides, that doesn't happen. Which, if that isn't quality, if that isn't manned and maintained, we cannot get this message out to people who are in the parking lot or in their homes who are struggling in their addiction. The resource requires us to get up and do it. And you don't need it. I'll teach any of y'all. I would do it. How about kids? Now, I get to work with teenagers every Sunday night, and I gotta tell you, sometimes I don't really wanna do it. And I don't feel like I'm great with kids, but I do it because there are middle schoolers at our church who you can change their life in one conversation. And yet, when you think about how important that is, and yet, every week at Recovery Alive, we're understaffed in the kids area. Every week. It's like there's miracles happening and you're like, I'm not interested. I'm tired. I'm not trying to guilt trip you. I'm just trying to give you guys some perspective. Don't be motivated by like, do I like kids or not? Or like, do I like being on stage or not? Or do I like making food or not? Like, what are we talking about? Is God worthy of it or not? There are children who are experiencing trauma at home, who are experiencing the same kind of horrible things that you experience as adults, and yet they don't have the capacity to understand it, and so it affects their entire life. That is a mission field. Why are we not caring for them? Why would you not want to, I don't want to give up an hour. I know it would change a kid's life, but I don't want to give up an hour. I don't want to go and they're just going to be they're just going to be loud and they're going to ask to play with my phone and they're going to throw things and I don't want to deal with that, right? Imagine if God did that with us. Jeremy, he's so neurotic. He's so shy. I'm not going to help him. He's afraid of everything. I'm not going to try and make him brave, give him a purpose. Imagine if God did that. Imagine if God did that for you. I don't want to save them. They're gonna sin again. Come on, guys. So I think that if you don't know your calling, that's fine. Start doing something, and if it doesn't work out, then do something else. That's okay, right? Right, John? If someone serves on a team, and after 4 weeks, they're like, I don't think I want to do that, find a new team. That's fine. I would rather that than nothing. I would rather you try something and then try something else than don't try at all. Because Jesus is worthy of that. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna play some guitar. I want you to take 3 minutes, just 3 minutes. Think of something. Write it down. Commit to it. And if nothing comes to mind, find a leader and say, put me anywhere. If you think that you don't have enough value, you do. God gives you value. You can change someone's life.